Oh, I thought you had a mic attached.
I can shout. Oh, that's from my homeboy over there.
Oh,
Jeremiah on the video camera. Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. What an incredible crowd. You guys are jacked. Honestly, it must be like the coffee bar in here. That's a brilliant idea, but it gets me energized. So I appreciate you for coming out here. I know that time is the most valuable thing you got, and I appreciate you spending a little bit of it here with me. So I got 20 minutes. I'm just going to dive in a little bit about my story and how do we engineer disruption for positive change. So if you guys would have told me that I'd be standing on this stage 7 years ago, I would have looked at you and been like, man, you're crazy. That was definitely not in my cards. At least I didn't see it as such. 7 years ago, I landed in LA. I packed up all my bags into my parents' Tahoe, and I came down here, maybe like yourselves, on a mission to change the world, to create something of myself, to create a future, to really get out there, and also make a shit ton of money. Yes, I had come down here with a very unique idea in mind. I was going to become an actor in Los Angeles. Oh, you laugh, but I had just landed a major role in a major blockbuster feature film. I was frat boy #1 in Twilight. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah. I was the dude who got kicked in the nuts by Kristen Stewart, only to have Robert Pattinson come up and save the day. That was my claim to fame, my 15 minutes, that was it. I was going to be a star. So I came down here and fell flat on my face. It was rough. It was rough. I was optimistic, I was young, I was inspired, I had that whole thing like I'm going to take on the world. And I rented a small little room in my friend's house. It was basically like a little closet. I spent like $500 a month. And I had a little bit of savings, and I was going out on auditions, and I was working it, and I was studying, and I was trying to make it happen. And audition after audition. No, 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 no. I'm like, this is a lot more difficult than I thought. Apparently success, you don't just walk into a room and it just all of a sudden happens. So I was learning the hard lessons of life and becoming broke at it very quickly. And I was down and out. I literally had no more money left. I was borrowing money from my friend. I was stealing food out of my friend's kitchen. And it was a very sobering and difficult time. But I got this opportunity to get an audition for a lead role in a network picture. And I said, this is going to be it. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to turn it around. I put everything I could muster into it. I was visualizing. I was studying. I had to dig deep and like pull out the emotions in the audition. I was a father for the first time, and I was introduced to my son, and I had to cry and like look into his eyes. And so I walked in there, got in front of the producers, did my thing, nailed it, walked out. I was walking along the studio lot, and I remember just like breathing it in, like, this is the moment before it all happens, baby. This is it. I get in my car and I'm driving home, and my agent calls me and I'm like, when are we filming, baby? And she goes, Alex, what the hell did you do? I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, the producers thought you were stoned. I was like, what? She goes, did you smoke before you went on your audition? I said, no, I would never do that. I'm a professional. I smoked after the audition. I'm just kidding. I just said that for a fact. But I was like, what are you talking about? She said you were the worst audition that they had seen. Oh my God. I literally, like, I pulled my car over. I was like, I got hit by a truck. I said, how is that possible? Like, what do you mean? That was the best performance of my life. And she said, I don't know. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, like, did I get given the wrong script? Like, something must have happened. And in that moment, I quit. I never walked into an audition room again. And some might see that as a failure, right? And I definitely considered at that moment that this was it. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so, a little bit of wisdom insert into the story here. Was this failure, or was this just an opportunity in disguise? I believe that failure is a frame of mind, and it's identifying your purpose that's most important. The problem is I hadn't done that yet. So, around this time, I was making these little furry hoods for friends and family. Has anybody ever heard of SpiritHoods before? Oh man, I need to do a better job. Okay, one or two people. This is the first SpiritHood that I ever made. So, yes! Woo! So, SpiritHoods, it's a faux fur animal hoodie, right? We give back to nonprofits that help endangered animals. It's got your little sleeves with your little pockets here and whatnot. You can wear it as a scarf, you can rock it. And I basically got the idea from going to music festivals and places like Burning Man and things like that, and I didn't think anything of it, right? And so my friend came over and he's like, man, you gotta pull your head out of your ass. This is not the end of your life. Come to this party with me, right? And so I put my spirit hood on, and I went to this like little pretentious party in Hollywood. Everybody's like dressed up, looking all good, and I roll in with that thing on, and people are like, who the hell is this guy? And it was crazy. Like in an instant, I went from 0 to 100, like wallflower to rock star. People wanted to pet me and touch me and take pictures of me, and like invite me over to their table for shots. I think I woke up in like Lindsay Lohan's closet that night. It was crazy. And I said, was this an anomaly or can this be repeated? So I kept wearing my hood out around town, and sure enough, people were stopping me on the street. They were like literally pulling like over in traffic, like, yo, where did you get that thing? I want one. I'm like, I can make you one. And so that was the light bulb, and I said, okay, I got to turn this into a business. Now, mind you, I had no business experience. I had no formal business education, and I definitely didn't have any money. But the beautiful thing is that didn't matter. That actually helped me. And when we talk about disruption, it helped because I was able to come into an industry without any preconceived notions or ideas of how I needed to think, be, or act. And so that naivete, in a way, really kind of helped the success that I'm about ready to tell you about. So I had to figure it out. How are we going to create this company, SpiritHoods, right? So I flew up to Portland, Oregon at the time where my partners were. We got into a room, we started riffing, we had a bottle of tequila, we wrote our business plan out on a napkin, and we decided to come up with the term SpiritHoods, really embracing that inner animal that we give back to nonprofits that we were inspired by, and that was going to be the mission. So I came back to LA, I was figuring it out. Okay, how do I manufacture? Beating the streets. How do I source? How do I, design? How do I sell? How do I market? How do I build a website? How do I do all these things that all of us ask ourselves every single day? And I basically asked a lot of questions and just had this belief that this was going to be it. This was going to be great. And so we launched at our trade show. We basically had a booth in Vegas that was duct taped together, and it was horrible looking. And I had like 9 samples that I begged people to make for me, and I said, just trust me, I'm going to come back with orders. So we launched in Vegas. We opened up 45 accounts, and we did $1 million in the first year, and we were on. We were on. Thank you. And then the second year, we did $4.5 million. And we were even more on. And I mean, it was crazy. People were calling, like interviews, celebrities were wearing the product. Like, the brand itself was its own celebrity. And I'm like, we made it, baby! Finally, after all this time, I'm here. This is it. And then 2012 came around, and all of a sudden the phones weren't ringing anymore. Well, at least not as much. And the money wasn't coming in like it was supposed to be. And there was this kind of feeling of uneasiness. We had invested all of our money back into the company in all of the wrong ways. Because mind you, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I thought that was it. You just put on furry hats, went out and partied, and you made millions. Isn't that how it works? No. So the end of 2012 was a very sobering moment. And basically, we had lost all of our money. We had to fire our 10 employees. We had to close down shop. We downsized into a small little office. It was horribly depressing. And I remember just sitting in my bathroom just crying and thinking to myself, how the hell did this happen? How the hell did this happen? And during that time, it was really like, what do I do? Where do I go from here? It's one thing to not get an audition or something when you don't have anything, but to go from, quote, success to losing that all was extremely difficult. And so during that time, I read an email from a woman named Maya, and she had a son named Ronan. He was a beautiful boy, 2 years old, beautiful eyes, just an incredible spirit, and she told me about his struggle with cancer. And she said, one of the most amazing things was the SpiritHoods that we bought, because in the hospital and the war, they would keep his head warm, and we would wear them as a family, and it actually brought some joy to our miserable lives during this time. And she looked at me when I talked to her the first time. She said to me, Alexander, she said, when he wore his spirit hood, it was the only time that I saw him come alive again, in a time when he was dying. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I think I have problems. Screw me. Screw my issues. I've got nothing on this. And if I can in any way do something to help, then I'm going to figure it out. The poor kid went through horrific things that no child should ever experience. Still gets me choked up. And I said, you know what? No matter what happens with this company, I'm going to go and I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to tell this woman's story. And so I went down to her house in Arizona, and she let me into her house for 3 days. We shot a little documentary, and we told the story to our audience, and we created a Spicy Monkey Spirit Hood, which is what she called her little boy. And we raised about $50,000 for her nonprofit. And in that moment, thank you, in that moment, I realized, okay, there's something more to this, right? There's something more to it. We must have a belief in something greater than ourselves. A little bit of wisdom number 2. And this was the second big lesson that I learned looking back, is that before that, it was all me, me, me. What's wrong? Why am I not in the position I'm in? Why am I not making the money that I want? Why isn't the business doing what it needs to be doing? And I had totally forgot about the reason why we started to begin with, which was to give back, to help. And then my product was inspiring people, and I wasn't paying attention to that. So the second that I started caring again, or at least focusing on that belief that was bigger than myself, things started to turn around. And so I said, all right, we're going to change this thing. We're going to get back on track. We're going to take this company. We're going to change her around. I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes. I'm going to put on my big boy pants. I'm going to figure out how to market. I'm going to figure out how to take a company that's declining and turn it around. I'm going to figure out all the things about business that I clearly don't know right now. And we're going to make this a success is the last thing I do. I swear to God. And so I got us on Shark Tank. And that was incredible. And it gave us a boost of adrenaline. And now the phones were ringing again. I said, okay, this is working. And I figured out, okay, how do I market online? Shift our focus from wholesale into like online strategy, social media, e-commerce, all these things. How do I dive into digital media? How do I really learn that? How do I hire right? All these questions, right? How do I heal the relationships within our community? How do I re-energize our company culture? And in 2014, we started to see a growth again. Last year we saw 40% growth, and now we're back positioned for the best year that we've had since 2011. And so since that time, I realized, looking back, that there were a few very key things, and I could sit here and talk for a long time, but I got 7 minutes left. And I really wanted to kind of distill down for you guys, like if I could think about the 3 most important lessons I learned. I touched on 2, right? For engineering disruption. One is identifying your purpose. I think that us as individuals and entrepreneurs, we oftentimes overlook ourselves. We go straight into the business. What can make us money? Or how do I grow? Or how do I market? And we can oftentimes end up 5, 10 years, 5 months, however long down the road, unhappy, miserable, and saying, what the hell happened? And I think that it's extremely important, this is part of what I teach, is to identify yourself. Personal development. What is your vision, your mission, your purpose in life? What gets you up in the morning? What inspires you? What do you want to create in this world? What do you want to see? Have you ever taken the time to really map that out? Really look at that, meditate on it, and really get that clear. It becomes your North Star, your guiding compass. It's going to navigate you through all those tough things in life. And to me, this is the first step. And the second one is the belief in something greater than yourself. So after we take care of ourselves, it's kind of like that analogy of like the oxygen mask on the plane. It's like you can run around giving everybody oxygen, but if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to pass out and die. So take care of yourself, and then how do we get beyond ourselves, right? How do we get past our ego, like this gentleman said, get out of our own way, right? And really start working for what's bigger. Because the truth is, entrepreneurship is really fucking hard. Who knows that? Okay, right? And I think a lot of people, it's easy to talk about, success this, success that. But really, success is a frame of mind. And, you know, the sad thing is that the system has kind of created what success is supposed to look like for us. It's supposed to be money. It's supposed to be, you know, an app company that flips and turns into a 100 billion unicorn. It's supposed to be all this stuff. It's supposed to be the house, the fancy car, all the monies and shit. And then what happens? How many people do you know that have that are miserable and hate their existence? Clearly, it doesn't bring happiness. Happiness is free. Success is free. Right? We're all successful. We all are successful if we believe in it. Right? Failure is the exact same thing. They're brother and sister. We fail when we give it power and believe that we have failed. Right? Or is it an opportunity to grow? And so, it's all about perception. It's all about belief. And the third thing is a little more practical. Because I was looking back and I was thinking to myself, okay, disruption. This word is very common now. I'm called my company the Disruptive, so I better figure this out. How do we engineer disruption? Now, when I go to branding or market strategy or product design, I always try and use this little simple tool. I look at what's taking place in the market. I look at what people are saying from every touch point of your brand, the products that people are creating, the messages that people are putting out there, the trends that are taking place. Trends are interesting, right? The only thing that I think trends are important for is understanding them so that you can do the opposite. If you truly want to be disruptive, now trust me, the markets are built upon riding the wave of trends. I mean, if you look at the fashion industry, everybody's trend forecasting and figuring out how their product can match into everything else so we can all wear the same shit. That's not disruptive. But do you know that there's people at the top who sit there and think very carefully about how they're going to engineer the next season and how they're going to change these things that everybody else, all the cows in the herd going moo, are going to adopt? So if we truly want to be disruptive, we have to now start thinking above. How do we engineer the next segment? What is that going to look like? So we take a look at what's going on in the market, right? And then we just simply say, what is the opposite? If it's baggy jeans, it's skinny jeans. Like, whatever it is. If it's you know, flat UX and design, it's 3D. If it's this, it's that. Just simply take a look at the opposite. It doesn't mean you have to do the opposite. Just look at the varying degrees from point A to point B and figure out how you can identify how your message, how your product, how your positioning can be angled in a different way. And this is the second thing that I teach, which is brand development. Really diving deep into the layers of your brand. Not just your product offering, the value, how it might be different, but how are you different from the market in everything you do? From the voice, from the aesthetic, to your messaging, to your financial story, for example. These things we might not consider. And really take the time to engineer a different story. And if you really take the time to do this and pay close attention to detail in everything that you do, your brand will stand out. And so the next bit is something called the universal dichotomy. And this is something that my brother, who's an incredible brand strategist, he created like the Johnny Walker Keep Walking campaigns and all this kind of stuff. Old ad guy. And he said there's something called the universal dichotomy. I'm going to give you some examples. To risk death for what you believe is to truly live. Ironic. The more you give, the more you receive. We've all heard this. There is perfection in the imperfections. You don't know what you have till it's gone. Our greatest gifts and treasures are truly priceless. They cost nothing. So, how do we translate that into imagery? What does this look like? This is one of my favorites. Thank you for driving carefully through the village. I hope nobody was hurt. But there's a perfect example of this ironic dichotomy. One image, the juxtaposition of two, creating a powerful impact. Messaging, imagery, right? Here's another one. A little more lighthearted. See if you can see it at all. This one's a little more subtle. Can you see back there in the back? This is a laptop with a cover case that's made of marble. Ironic. Here's another lighthearted example. It's just a notepad in the shape of an iPhone. The juxtaposition. It's telling a story. Very simply but powerfully, right? I think we get that one. And for me, I just realized this the other day while creating this presentation. that this universal dichotomy was baked into SpiritHoods with the statement, people are animals too. And there is this innate nature that I think was just understood, that we are all animals, we are all connected, and that by wearing this thing, we had somehow, or a representation of that. And truly, out of any of the marketing and the things I learned, I can't take credit, I can take some credit for that, but really, it was the product that marketed itself. And that's because it had this philosophy baked into it. So I hope you find value in that. You guys can definitely keep in touch with me. I work with entrepreneurs, I mentor, I teach. I love this stuff. This experience has now pushed me into my new venture called the Disruptive, and I'm working with social entrepreneurs, creating a community. That's why I love being on campuses like this. This is what we need. Again, I think that the entrepreneurial individualism is a fallacy. We need a strong community to create a strong and healthy child. Same thing with the company, right? We need a healthy community to create a healthy business, and we need to do this together. And that's what I'm all about. So feel free to reach out to me, and thank you guys very much.
Well done. Wow. That was incredibly passionate, and I love the summary. So there was really great storytelling there, obviously. But the summary of the three major points in this universal dichotomy, and something as simple as like yin yang, light dark, I totally get that. And you're speaking the language. We really appreciate that here. So thank you so much for sharing that passion, that story, and we wish you the best of success with Spirit Animals. Spirit Hoodies, Spirit Hoods. Okay, obviously. I'm paying close attention. More coffee, or less. Because it could just be ADHD at this point. In any case, we're gonna host the Q&A section right now. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Josh will walk around with the mic, and we'll get your question to Alex. Comments later. Will you stick around to interact with the audience afterwards?
Hang out so we can chat and all that.
Absolutely. So chatting after, offline, and questions now.
Raise your hand.
You touched on.
Hey, what's happening? Good.
You touched on healing relationships within our community.
Yes.
Can you go into that? Like, what you meant by that?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, that can have a dual meaning, right? The relationships with your community as a business and a brand. So that can mean like brand equity. How do you really build that? You know, and as a company that's struggling, oftentimes you tend to neglect those things. Customer service, you know, resources get cut. You stop paying attention to the intimacy of those relationships. And really when we're talking about community, especially in this day and age with social media and whatnot, those relationships are huge, right? So on one end, I mean that. On the other end, I meant a more personal thing where I was struggling with my partners. And how many people have partners here? How many people is a perfect marriage? You, okay. These guys are That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, what's that?
There's a formula.
Okay, well, I want to learn that formula. So, for me, you know, during that time, we were having a lot of conflict. And so, you know, it's easy to get along when things are going well. It's hard to get along when things are going bad, you know, and people start pointing fingers and ego gets involved. So it was a lot of like personal development. It was a lot of self-discovery. It was a lot of us having to work together as brothers to really figure that out and heal our relationships. And so we did things like, you know, we seek like outside counseling essentially to help us. And again, I liken it to a marriage, but I think it is. And you can make the choice to invest in that, right, and heal those relationships, or you can just kind of say cut it and let it go. And so that's what I was referring to. Yeah.
Alex, back here.
Yo.
I don't know if you can see me. Hi, my name is Taja. I'm co-founder in a wardrobe styling business, but I'm a mom first and foremost. And
awesome.
That a lot of people say that their kids inspire them, but you know, my kids really inspired me to invent and innovate. So I'm in the middle of developing a revolutionary pacifier.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and but I just find when you're developing a product that there's always that fear and that paranoia of, you know, copycats. And you can patent up all you want, but there's always going to be, you know, copycats out there. So I wanted to know, how did you deal with that, or did you even experience that fear or that issue, and how did you get over that hill?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I dealt a lot with that because we've been knocked off a lot. From Target to Walmart to you name it, right? It's all over the place. So in the beginning, we literally started with like $9,000 that we had asked friends for, and we did not have the money to patent up or lawyer up. And so we consulted with a patent attorney at the time, and basically we just decided that the most powerful thing to be is just first to market. Be first, be the best, and you will always be noticed as that. There's always a place for second place, but branding and moving quickly and innovating and being the first and being the best is the most powerful protection I think that you can have. And at first, it was a little difficult when people were knocking us off and stuff. And, it's easy to say, oh, well, that's a sign of success, like you should be stoked about that. Well, I'm not stoked about that when they're like taking our profit, but there came a time where you begin to just let it go, because especially in the fashion industry, in any industry, it's just commonplace. And I think we have to just accept the fact that's gonna happen. You gotta protect yourself as much as possible. I think, in the garment industry, it's a little more difficult to patent something. Whereas if you have something that's proprietary within the tech industry, or maybe it's a functionality like you have, you're probably definitely gonna want to get that handled if that is your main thing. And I know that if you're looking for VC investment and whatnot, the first question out of O'Leary's mouth always on Shark Tank is, what's proprietary about this, right? So yeah, that would be my advice to you.
Does anybody else have a question?
Morning. One of the things that I've noticed and that you were able to move through is just the suck of it. It's what anybody in the military? Anybody in the military in here? All right, thank you for your service. So you've probably heard this one: embrace the suck, right? Just embrace the suck, and of course there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of negative emotion. Number one, did you embrace the suck? And number one, what were the tools or keys that allowed you to be able to move through that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yeah, to embrace the suck. It's gonna happen. This gets back to that yin and the yang situation, and this is my answer is more of a I think spiritual one, in the sense that like Bruce Lee said, be like water. When water pours into a glass, it becomes the glass. When it crashes to the floor, it crashes, right? And so in my earlier stages in this, I was resisting the suck. It was like me definitely fighting against this, because the only thing that was gonna make me happy was what I viewed as success, and that kind of got down to that dichotomy of belief. It's like, shit is gonna happen. It's just a law of nature. It's not always gonna be good. And if we fight and resist that, then it's going to be worse. In Buddhism they say desire is the source of all suffering. It's not being present in the now. And I think it goes back to that moment of fear that I was talking about, of failure, right? If I would have been present in that moment, and I would have just really grounded myself and said, okay, well, maybe the universe is telling me something. Maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I could have handled that with a little more grace. So to answer your question, for me, it was a lot of personal development and being confronted by life to confront my own BS, basically, my own ego, and really sober up and get out of my way, like you were saying. So I think that it's definitely more of a heart-mind understanding,
Hi, Alec. I'm part of the Happy Three Musketeers here. Happy Married Three Musketeers.
Nice.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Of course, disruptive innovation and breakthrough innovation in 180 is up our alley, so I strongly love that. I wonder if you could share some of your thoughts about how design played into your breakthrough innovation or disruptive innovation.
One more time, how
design played into
Design.
it, and when you started applying design in that process.
Yes, absolutely. So I think for every industry and project is a little bit different, right? As a creative, the whole concept of the chicken before the egg or the cart before the horse. I personally don't believe that you start with the finance and then you go say, okay, well, how do I create a product to make money off of? For me, it's the reverse. It's what can I create? So when I mentor people who have an idea, oftentimes they're trying to put the cart before the horse. They want to figure out the business plan. They want to go and get the VC fund. They want to do all these other things. But it's like, hold up, let's refine the product. Let's really get that MVP down first. Let's test it. Going into the kind of like the lean startup approach, protect your idea, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And I suffer from this too in the design process, where as a creative, I want everything to be like perfect before I launch, and that causes issues, especially in this day and age. So I think it's much more important to create, what it is. This was very rough. The product that I have now is a little more refined, but it worked. You know what I'm saying? And so you get to market, you get out there, and then I think you refine as you go. And everybody's design iteration is different. I learned something great from a mentor of mine that used to work at Disney. He was an animator. And he had this thing that the old school animators at Disney used to do, which was called plussing. And so you would create something and you go to somebody that you respect and you say, hey, can you plus this idea for me? And that would mean, okay, well, I'm gonna come and add something constructive to it. And so everybody was going around plussing each other's ideas, and it was creating this really great environment. And that was the golden age where all these great things like Lion King and all these classic movies from before were coming out in that ethos. So I think having a really creative environment, this gets me going. The last bit I would say is that I think one of the major issues I was struggling with in my partnership is communication. And I think a lot of times the left brain and right brain worlds, so to speak, clash. Right, the money's saying there's no way in hell we're gonna get space monkeys on the moon. We can't afford that. The creative's saying I'm not necessarily talking about that. I mean something like this, but more like this. And so it's this kind of constant battle between the creative and the logistical world, innovation and operation. And so a really powerful tool that a mentor gave me that helped save our business was we have to create space for both. So before a meeting or before we go into an ideation phase, we'll say, this is an hour meeting, let's just say. The first 30 minutes is completely creative. There's no editing, there's no saying we can't do this. If you want to put space monkeys on the moon, put that up on the board. We'll talk about that, because when you allow that type of freedom to take place, oftentimes that illogical kind of thing spins off into something else that could be really cool. And then you say, okay, now this 30 minutes is completely operation. Let's look at space monkeys and all these other crazy things and figure out what is it that we're going to execute on. And so having an environment that's conducive for both is really key. Yeah.
You spoke of the universal dichotomy, or the universality of dichotomy. And we have a dichotomy in the notion of you succeed best when you focus on others. And yet when you succeed, it's very easy to be tempted to focus on your own needs, to focus on your own success, your own ego, whatever is driving you. How do you, I wouldn't say so much break the pattern as keep the pattern cycling through in a constructive and not too disruptive to your own personal psyche manner?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm not going to stand up here as some sort of spiritual leader or anything like that. I'm going to tell you what works for me. I don't have all the answers with this. I think this is a lifelong process. And if anybody here has completely found that balance, I think it's called enlightenment. Please, I'd love to talk to you. I think that for me, I'm constantly, especially while creating the Disruptive too, right? It's like I'm starting a new business. I'm bootstrapping it. I'm going out there. I want to be giving, and my whole ethos is to give and give back. But at the end of the day, I got to pay my bills too. And oftentimes when I'm spending my 12 hours or 16-hour days sometimes in my dungeon just like hammering stuff out, I begin thinking about the plan, the process, the revenue, how this is going to affect me, how I'm going to be able to, me, that type of thing. And it's just so easy and natural to get sucked into that. And one thing that I do is every day I do a little meditation. For some people, they call it visualization. Some people call it prayer. For me, it's a little meditation. And I just remind myself every day of why I'm doing this. And if I notice that my to-do list starts getting wound up with things that are not taking that into consideration, I start putting things on there to put them back in the forefront of what I'm doing. So like right now I'm searching for a few nonprofits that I can align with that really match my vision, right? And so that was supposed to happen at the beginning of the week. You know what I mean? And so today I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hammer this out before the end of today and really do the research and make the calls that I need to make. And so I think it's just like little things like that. I think it's also, it's like personal growth. It's how important is that to us, and how much time are we willing to truly reflect on that and take action on it? If that answers your question. I thought so.
Starts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really ultimate question that people will probably be battling for the rest of their lives, because temptation is very real. But thank you so much for sharing with us in the Q&A session. Thank you so much. Great questions today. We really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, would you mind taking a picture with our beautiful audience?
Oh, hell yeah, I want to get a selfie with y'all too.
So we're going to do it this way?
Yeah. We're going to do. Okay, I'm going to do one and I want to do a selfie.
But I will take the picture for you. Okay. Selfies of the blind of human existence.
Yeah,
This is how I feel. This is how I feel.
Okay, how are we doing this?
we gotta get some energy in this.
Well, if we all had hoodies, we'd have the energy.
Big smiles.
Say Kenshi.
Are you gonna give us
I got it. Make sure you take the selfie.